Right, so today I want to look at 6 very common reasons why people don't cue straight. So we see lots of things all the time, all the improvements we try to do with our technique and our cue action, but I've seen 6 common mistakes I'm seeing all the time when I'm helping players on the table. So we're going to go through each one now and how you can try and fix them. Right, so number 1 here is moving the head. So we hear this all the time about head movement and keeping the head very, very still. But there's a reason why this is very important. So some head movement, if it's consistent and it's happening on every shot, isn't always that detrimental to a player. So if you look at somebody like Judd Trump, he has a slight lean and a bit of head movement, but he does that on every single shot. So it's a consistent way that he's striking the ball. But for everybody else, we're trying to keep that head nice and still because any head movement can easily throw the cue offline one way or the other. So what we try and do is keep that head very still on every shot so that we can't throw the cue offline, and it makes cueing straight that bit easier. Now, the problem with head movement is it tends to happen more when we're under a bit of pressure. So if I've got a red like this one, a long red that I need to try and pot to maybe get in to start a frame or maybe to win a frame, it's common on this shot because it's more difficult, there's a bit more anxiety, that we'll move the head to have a look at what the outcome of the shot is. So this is very important here, that we try and keep the head very still on these critical shots. Okay, so I'm going to play this shot here. My goal is to keep very, very still so that I don't throw the cue offline. More important on these difficult shots, so no movement. Bringing the cue ball back up the table. I have a nice shot there on the green there so that I can get to the yellow. So very, very important, especially on those shots where there's a little bit more anxiety, you feel a little bit more pressure on the shot. Remember to keep that head very, very still. Okay, now the second big reason that players don't consistently cue straight is gripping the cue too tight at the back. So when we play shots, we don't want to feel like this grip hand has really tightened and strangled the cue. It can easily throw the cue offline. So I'm not saying don't hold the cue and don't grip at all, but we don't want to feel like this has gone very tight and it's suddenly 9 out of 10 in power and we're really strangling the cue. So the common thing that we see is that players, if I'm just playing a little stun shot here, is that players really tighten up on the cue there, and it's easy to lose a bit of control and throw the cue offline. So what I want to do instead there is just try and keep that hand nice and relaxed, nice and neutral when I play the shot. So feathering up to the shot just the same. Now keep that hand nice and relaxed and loose. So nice shot there, through to my chest, no tension. And when I've delivered there, I should just feel that somebody could pull the cue out of my hand if they wanted to. I haven't got it absolutely strangled after the shot, and that's going to help keep the cue nice and online. Okay, so the third very common thing that we see all the time is that players aren't using a backswing that's long enough. So when we've got a shot like this yellow here, or a shot that requires more power and more spin on the cue ball, it's very important to use a backswing that's long enough so that you can generate the spin on the cue ball and also accelerate the cue smoothly without throwing the cue offline one way or the other. So on this yellow, I've got to generate quite a bit of spin because I want to screw back for the green. And if I use a very short backswing, so if I only pull the cue back a little bit, very difficult for me there. So I've managed to pot the ball. It's easier with that shorter backswing for me to throw the cue offline and maybe miss the pot. But I certainly couldn't generate the backspin that I needed to pot the yellow and screw back for the green because I hadn't got enough of a runway there with my cue to build up the speed and get the cue going at the right speed to get that amount of screw back on the white. So what's much more effective here is that we're going to use a nice long backswing so that we've got plenty of time to smoothly get the cue up to speed and generate all the spin that we want on the cue ball. So nice long final backswing, push right through the shot, easily generated the spin that I required on the white that time. So by using that nice long backswing, I got right the way through the cue ball, generated that backspin that I wanted on the white easily, and I'm less likely to throw the cue offline. And that brings us on to number 4, which is that players accelerate the cue too quickly. So players are in a rush after the backswing to get the cue delivered and get the cue up to speed. It's much more beneficial here to build the speed up of the cue gently and smoothly. So if I've got to pot a ball here and I want to follow the white into the pocket, so we go down onto the shot and now I want to follow this ball into the pocket. Now if I try and accelerate too quickly, I may pop the ball, but I might not get the controlled follow through that I want nicely into that pocket. So what's better on this shot here is if so make sure this is set up nice and straight, but what's better here is if I give myself plenty of time to get the cue up to speed. So I'm aiming at the top of the white, and then I want to do my backswing, keep still, smoothly push the cue through so there's no rush to get the cue up to speed. And that's much more control on that shot there. It just gives you plenty of time for the arm to stay under control, that back arm, it's not rushed, it's building up speed gently, and that gives you much more control. You hit the white more accurately, and you hit the object ball more accurately. And that brings us on to number 5, which is trying to steer the shot. And what I mean by that is players don't line up the shot when they're standing up in this standing position here. They probably get down on the wrong angle, and then when they're down, they try and steer the cue where they need it to go so that they pop the ball. So a common thing you might see here is players get down a bit thick on the black, and then when they deliver, they push the arm to the side, trying to get the black to go in by steering the shot. So it's very, very important that what we do is we commit to picking the line that we want from this standing position. We do our best to pick out where we think we need to hit that black so that it goes into the pocket. We must do that in the standing position. And then when we're down, all we're allowed to do is cue straight and trust that we've picked that right line. So I've picked it standing up, and then when I'm down, all I'm allowed to do is cue straight to my chest, keep nice and still, stay, watch the object ball, no steering, didn't move the cue offline. I committed to the angle that I've picked. Much, much, much more beneficial there to be doing that instead of getting into the habit of trying to steer shots, because that slows down your learning of the angles because you've got an inconsistent cue delivery. So pick the angle when you're standing up and commit to it, and only cue straight once you're down. And that brings us on to our final point, which is that we must be looking at the object ball at the time that we play the shot and at the time that we strike. So I see lots of players here that are more worried about looking at the cue ball. They think that that's the ball that they're hitting, so they want to be looking at the cue ball when they strike. But it's very difficult, especially once we get to these big distances, to hit the object ball exactly where we want to if we're not looking at that object ball at the time of strike. So while we're doing our feathers, we do a few checks between the white ball and the red ball. So we might look at the white, look at the red, look at the white. One last check at the white, and then look at that red ball when you're striking to make sure that you're going to hit that exactly where you want to. So I get down on this shot, and I'm going white, red, red. One last check at the white. Now I'm just looking at that red, just look at the red, play the shot. And by making sure that I was looking at exactly what I should have done there, which was the target, which was that red ball, I hit nice and accurately, I potted the ball. So make sure you're looking at that object ball when you strike. So as always, if you did enjoy this video, please remember to give the video a like. If you watch these videos and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing, because that really just helps me to keep this content coming. So there are lots of instructional videos like this, practice routine videos, and also some fun videos as well with some exhibition shots. So like, subscribe. You can support me on Patreon as well. The details for that are in the description below. For anyone that's interested in any one-to-one coaching sessions or group sessions, I do those on the table all the time. So my email address and my website link are in the description below, so please get in touch with me for anybody that's interested in that. And as always, thanks for watching. Cheers.